Well, let me show you an example of a house. Is that clear? It's real clear on my screen here, but I'm not sure how. From here it looks pretty fuzzy. But let's just take a look. Now I'll tell you, this is an Old Testament house, but it relates nicely to the New Testament story. This house has the main entrance here, and it's got this sort of main central room. Got a room over here, has a room over here. It has a second floor with rooms, and depending on, may stretched all the way across. And then there's a room through that door back there. And of course, in Bible days, that's not the door to the bathroom. There was no bathroom in the house. You might have a pea pot, but there'd be no bathroom in the house. And then, so you got the ground floor, you've got a second floor, and then of course you got the roof. See, the guy's mowing his grass. What is he doing? Now, that's actually a roller. Archaeologically, we found them. They've been found, the round limestone rollers, and he's rolling the mud on the roof of his house, because his house would be made of branches and then mud. And in the spring, as the rain was finishing, he'd roll it to get it nice and sealed. And then in the fall again, as soon as it started to rain, he'd roll it again when it was a little damp. And that way he would keep it as waterproof as he could. And then, of course, they would probably continue to add layers as necessary. Well, in this house, actually that's a guy, and he's doing woman's work. What's he doing? Yeah, grinding grain. There's a fire. You know what's going on there? That's actually a cistern where with a rope pulling water up out of a cistern. What's going on there? A loom, weaving. So in this room is a work room for the house. What's over there? Well, right there, what's that? Assorted barnyard animals. What's over here? All right, yeah. And what's that look like? What's that look like? What's that look like? What's that look like? Yeah. Mangers, feeding troughs. Now, archaeologically, we find these on the ground floor of houses. Well, I said, well, it's a storage bin. Well, I suppose it could have been. But it appears to us that when you take everything we know about the cultures and actually what the Bible says, when we put it all together, it looks like this is the domestic stables where people kept animals in their homes. And you keep the animal in the house, number one. You want the animal there, especially valuable ones, maybe young ones, maybe pregnant mothers, maybe you keep your donkey, maybe your ox in there, your cow, maybe a couple sheep. You keep them in there to be safe so they don't get stolen or wander off. You're not going to keep your whole herd, whole flock of 100 sheep, but you'd keep some. If you've got them right there, then there's easy access to milk. Also, there's easy access to manure. Now, what did they do with that? Yeah, they would collect it. They would dry it out in the sun, and they would take little bricks of it, chop up little bricks, and it would be the fuel for their fires. And we're familiar in the Middle East, dung ovens. A dung oven was not an oven that was made of dung, but it was the fire that kept it going. Wood was scarce. You just didn't have all that stuff. So that's what they would cook over with a dung oven. So you keep the animals in the house. There'd be a bunch of reasons. And then these cold Palestinian nights, just the general warmth of warm bodies in the building just helped to keep it warm. So people did keep their animals in their homes. I give this talk a lot, and a guy came to me and said, when I was in Europe and I went to the little villages, the villagers in Europe in the early 20th centuries, they kept their animals in the house too. This has been a cultural thing in fact, it's still very much a part of the Middle Eastern world, but it wasn't that long ago when even the Western world did the same kind of thing. Now, this is a house in Hassanabad, Iran, and it's the house of Ali Vase. Now, the research was done in the 1970s. This was an anthropological study in Iran in the 70s, before things got crazy over there. So this is a modern village peasant house. And in this modern village peasant house, the doorway is here. This was an unroofed courtyard. When you walk past the house, high walls, it just looks to you like the whole thing's under roof. You just can't tell. I've been into a number of Middle Eastern houses. You go in and you realize there's a big part that's unroofed. But from the outside, it just looks like, there's a roof over everything. There might be a little bit of a lean-to or something here, just a little bit of a shade, but you can't tell. So you go in, this is all unroofed. Now that's where they kept straw for the animals probably, and then for other things. That's where they stored their cooking wood. This is the roof part of the house. Actually, that's the roof part of the house in particular. And you go in the one door, and there's the old living room and the new living room. Now this is the house. This is a family house. Whole family lived here. It's Iran. It gets pretty cold in winter season. Stays very hot in the summer. And this is the roof part. You go into the roof part, after you go in, that's where the stables are. You got to go through the house to get to the stables. You got to lead the animals in, you got to lead the animals out. Now that keeps them safe and keeps them close so you can get to them for milk and collect the manure and all that stuff, but that's where you kept them. And you got to go through the house to do it. That's been part of Middle Eastern culture for thousands and thousands of years. So, I'm trying to make the case that Mary and Joseph went to Joseph's ancestral home, family members. He went to their house. The cataluma, the guest room on the second or third floor, was full. And so Mary and Joseph stayed on the ground floor in the domestic stables. And that's where she gave birth to baby Jesus and laid him in a feeding trough, a manger. I would suggest it's all happening in the same house, and it's the ancestral home. Now, if I'm right, if that's an acceptable explanation, then this passage helps make my point, I think. Matthew chapter 12, you know the story. Jesus is preaching. Somebody says, "Yo mama's outside." And they want to talk to you. And Jesus, in the middle of his talk, or maybe they were doing questions and answers at that point, but Jesus looks to the crowd and he says to them, "Who's my mama and who are my brothers?" And then he points to his disciples. A disciple is a follower, learner, student. He points to his disciples and he said, "These are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." Now, they were talking to Jesus about his biological family, although there was a little touch to that, but they were talking about his biological family, and he was talking about his spiritual family. The idea to God is that family is really, really important. Biological family, you appreciate your biological family, but you understand the value and the importance of a spiritual family as well. And clearly that's what Jesus is saying. He's talking about the importance of his spiritual family. By the way, he didn't go out and see his mama after it was over. The text says. But the fact is, he made the point. He reminds them about spiritual family and the importance. But the point is the importance of family.